Welcome to the Northeast Kingdom Voice. I'm your host, Scott Wheeler. Today's guest is Anya Tynio. She recently completed her run for the U.S. House of Representatives. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Scott. Thanks for having me.
Well, you came on before
I did.
the election, and since then you've learned a lot. And, well, you didn't win the race.
No.
But I think you came out of it probably far richer in many ways than you did when you went into it. You probably learned a lot.
I definitely did, and I definitely have no regrets about running.
Right.
Despite the outcome, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I appreciated the opportunity to get the message that I had in front of the voters,
Right. So,
to which a great many were responsive to.
what was the percentage margin between you and Congressman Welch?
I believe it came down to, I think I had 26 or 28% of the vote. It equaled out to a little over 70,000 votes.
Right. Yeah, but and you know, you may have not, you might not be on your way to Washington D.C., but for
Yet.
a person, yet for a person who you didn't have the name recognition he had, and you did remarkably well.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Overcoming name recognition was probably one of the biggest things that we dealt with in my campaign. Definitely trying to have people know who you are and what you stand for is the most important thing you can do as a candidate. So that was what we focused on the hardest, and I believe that we accomplished that as well as we could have in the time frame.
Right.
I looked at the numbers after the election, of course, and there was not one single town in the state of Vermont that did not have somebody who voted for me. So
Right.
I did reach the state
Right.
comprehensively, and I am grateful for that.
Until you've run for office, I don't think people understand how hard it is to get your name out there. Because I served just Brownington, Charleston, Derby, Holland, and Morgan, and fortunately, I have name recognition quite well here. But just getting your name out in that smaller region, well, you really went for it, and you had
Yes,
to
I
get your
did.
name out through the state.
I had name recognition in the Northeast Kingdom just due to my job and
Right.
having lived here and all of these things. The most difficult part was getting that recognition down in the south of part of the state and in Burlington and Williston. And I had very, very loyal and dedicated campaign people who helped me do this. They spent days and days talking to their friends and neighbors. They posted on social media. They stood out and did sine waves for me. I have to say I had the greatest group of volunteers I've ever met. So it did work. We did get our name out there. The campaign itself was fairly well known.
Right.
By the election day eve, we were pretty well known. I received a lot of feedback on that, but unfortunately we just didn't get the amount of votes that we would have needed to take the state.
Did you, considering the large percentage of the media has a tendency to not hide their biases on lean and left, did you think you got a fair shake by the media?
I won't name names in this, but I will say that I only met one reporter that reported unbiasedly.
Right.
I would say the remainder of them were all biased towards the left, to the left. They were biased on the left side. And I think that the media, in some cases, very nearly campaigned for certain candidates.
Right.
And I like I said, I won't name which stations and which reporters, but definitely there is that aspect.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this before. We can criticize the candidates or the people serving us in their conduct, but maybe it's because I kind of grew up in the media.
Mm-hmm.
I think the real issue in this country is the media, and I don't only mean the ones that lean way left. I mean the ones that lean way right. I mean,
The media has a responsibility to the people to report the facts.
Right.
Without bias of either side. And
Right.
I think, unfortunately, in most cases, that's not occurring. It is either biased to the right or biased to the left. I try and look at 3 to 4 news stories on one single subject,
Right.
just to try and see what the common fact in all of them would be, because there's shading for both sides.
I actually like the BBC. Sometimes going to the BBC,
Well,
I
you get some pretty good world news from the BBC.
Well, no, actually, you get some pretty good U.S. news.
That's
for,
true, too.
I find a bit less biased, because the American, the news, I've pretty much abandoned the news, because one way or another, they don't even. It used to be, I believe, that if you were going to kind of sway stories, you maybe had to hide it a little bit. Now, if
Very blatant. It's very blatant now, and I think that when you look at the news stories, there's so much focus on the drama. They highlight drama. They will spend as much time as possible on the drama of the situation rather than on the facts, and that's not what news is. The news is the facts. So I think that definitely we need to move towards more reporting and less opinion.
Yeah, because really, it's really difficult to. You're watching something like I watch all the news. When I watch it, like if I'm going to watch news, I'll sit down. I'll listen to Fox. I'll listen to CNN.
Get your dose of
you
news.
get my dose, and I'll try to figure out. And I'll say, wait, that's opinion. So that's how come now. I've really started pulling away from the news, because
A lot of people have.
Yeah, because I don't really care for people's opinions. I want Walter Cronkite, and I know
I know who he is.
That's before your generation. He would sit there, he'd report the news, and the one time, and I laugh about this now, I don't remember this, but the one time he actually came out of his role as a reporter, and it was huge news. Some people scorned him, other people loved him. After spending some time in Vietnam, he basically said, it's time to get out. And that was, and so he got scorned for that. Can you imagine? Today's reporters can't even go a single broadcast without winging their opinion in.
No, most of them put in a hefty dose of opinion, and that's not what people want. To form their own opinions. They want to hear the facts,
Right.
and they'll form their own opinions. They don't want to tune into the news to be told what to think.
You know what I love?
So.
This in politics. I love listening to, no matter the president. I don't care if it's President Carter, President Bush, Clinton, or Donald Trump. I love listening to a speech. And then the news people will come on and explain to me what I just barely heard. It's like, I know what I heard.
That's true.
Right.
I find usually I will listen to the speech and I don't listen to the commentary.
Right.
Just because I just heard the speech, I know what they said.
So being in the media and being a meteor, well, now a dying meteor follower, is I kind of figured what you were up against, because I could watch the news. And it was disappointing to watch. It's like I watched during with Christine Hallquist. Well, it's like certain news organizations could not get past the fact that she was transgender. And I came out of it. And well, fortunately, I knew her in her previous life, and she's been on my radio show.
During Vermont Electric Co-ops.
Yeah, and she couldn't even get a message out because the media kept being so focused on the transgender bit. So even her, I believe, in a different way, suffered some of the same things that you suffered, just in a different way.
It's very hard to get the message out through the media, which
Right.
is unfortunate, because that's what the news should be
Right.
doing for people, is telling the public
Right.
where the candidates stand. And I think that regardless of who you are, it is difficult
that's true.
to get that message.
Yeah, they are looking for the drama. But on the positives, and I actually see this, you working actually for a news organization, you probably got, you got to see different sides of the news. So you're going to use that for a positive, I assume.
Oh, I intend to take all of the things that I've learned and done in this campaign and move in a positive direction with it. I will say that working in news to some extent, which I'm more in the advertising end of it, but working with that, you have an appreciation of what reporters need to go out and do. They have to go out and get their news stories and, make it so that find stories that are of interest to the public, and they work very hard at that. I'm not saying that the media doesn't work hard at doing that. I think they do have a bias and that they do focus on drama more than on the facts, which is unfortunate because the truly great reporters are the reporters that are able to give the facts in an engaging way.
That's true. You must have met some really great people on your your travels.
I have met numerous people that are to be admired for their accomplishments and for their beliefs and what they attempted to do for the state. And I think that it's unfortunate that they weren't given the opportunity to do what they wanted to do to help the state of Vermont. Right. The state of Vermont could use a little help, and I think that we would have been well off with the candidates that were running.
On the positive side, I'll tell you from a person who has served in office, not on the scale you were trying, but as a representative, there is also a place for people like you or those other candidates to serve in other ways. Because sometimes I feel that I serve my region better as a writer than I did as a representative. Sometimes that you're constricted.
You share your message.
Yeah, and you're easily constricted more in a role. And I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you one thing. Serving in office. Serving in office sometimes can really corrupt really good people, and because what
does happen.
Yeah, what happens is, and I think it's natural. You get into this groupthink, because you start not realizing it's like when you have a senator who has lived out of Vermont for 40 years. No disrespect, and I know Senator Leahy's a very fine man, and I know he loves Vermont. But how connected are you to Vermonters now? And because, just myself, if I spent a week in Montpelier, I tell my friends that I would have to come home, and it was like going to a chiropractor to get readjusted. My wife would have to readjust me to the real world. And
I'm sure that there's that aspect for all politicians. I think that it's always something that we have to focus on in politics to stay in touch with those that we choose to represent, that chose us to represent them. And I think that it's very important to focus on that and to live in the state that you represent and spend as much time as possible with your constituents so that you truly remember what it is that concerns them. Because it's easy to find your own concerns in a problem. It's important to understand what concerns them. And I think that 44 years is a long time.
Yeah,
Definitely it's a long time. I'm sure that you do lose touch with the local populace when you've been in Washington, D.C. that long.
And then the thing is, Vermont's if I recall right, is the only state in the nation that has never sent a woman to the U.S. Senate or the U.S. Congress.
That is correct. And they chose not to again.
Right.
But it was never about that for me. For me, it was all about my ideas for the state and about what I could do for the state and what I would try and help do the state accomplish. More jobs, better economy, stronger agriculture, constitutional rights. All of those things were very intrinsic to my campaign. And being the first woman would have been an honor, but it was not why I ran. I think that it's surprising for the state of Vermont, being as progressively inclined as they want to be, that they haven't. But I suppose they're waiting for a Democrat woman to come along.
I would imagine that's more likely it. You as a woman running for, and as a conservative woman running as a Republican, did you get any questions about that, even scorn?
I received a lot of questions about why I'm a conservative and why I'm a Republican.
Right.
And several people even told me that I should have run as a Democrat just because I would have won. And I said, well, I won't lie about who I am and what I stand for. So I did receive a lot of questions. I think that people were very surprised to find a woman that is pro Second Amendment.
Okay.
That doesn't tend to be something that Vermont women focus on, I guess. I know a lot of them that do,
Right.
but all of those things seem to be surprising, especially to reporters and different people that ask me these questions. And they asked me why I wanted to run as a conservative in the state of Vermont. And I told them what I'll tell you is that it's very important to have both sides represented so that the people can make a choice. I could probably easily go to a more Republican state and win election, but I wanted to try and help the state of Vermont. I wanted to try and showcase the opposite argument to our current politicians, because for so many years that wasn't done, and I think that I was successful in that.
So you weren't one of these politicians, because I know some personally, and some I actually like, but some of them will sell out their soul to be elected, as in like they will be everything to everybody, and then go down and do exactly what they want to do. And so your soul is all intact.
Yes, it is, and thank the Lord for that. But to me, it's important to be true to yourself. It's important to be true to your beliefs, and I don't claim to be everything for everybody. I would represent everybody to the best of my ability, but I would not change who I am just to please a voter long enough to get into office, because ultimately they'll see that that's not what you intended to do, and it's playing a fool's game to lie to the public like that.
But I will tell you one thing is I'm actually all over the map myself, but there sometimes like serving was a learned experience, and you would have found the same thing. Just you found even running was a learn. Sometimes things that we think we know, once, like people say, we got to vote, we got to run on common sense. Well, what common sense is to you and common sense is to me is different. But sometimes, serving was interesting, because some of the things I knew, I realized I didn't know. And it's interesting, but you were so adept on the topics, especially for your age. You were just like, you were able to answer questions better than I would be able to.
Well, I appreciate that. Somebody asked me about that. They said, "How are you able to answer these questions?" It kind of became a famous thing during my campaign,
Right.
that I didn't use notes. And I said, it's not hard to do that when you're speaking your true beliefs.
Right.
And I did study the issues very carefully. I looked at all aspects, and I've always tried to keep ahead of the topics. But I understand that there's also room to learn about everything. What you think you know 100%, there's always a little bit more that you will learn about that subject. Life is learning, so we can never say we've learned everything there is to learn.
So how did you get along with Congressman Welch?
I believe that we got along as well as we could, given our positions. We had a respectful campaign. It was not filled with rhetoric and slander, which I appreciate that the congressman maintained a level of class for this campaign. And in some cases, he even agreed with the policies that I was discussing. So I think that it goes to show that there's a lot more that could unite us if we reach out for it. It is what it is. We got along as well as we could, and I think that neither one of us had a disrespect for the other.
Right. And
I think that that's important. It's important to respect your fellow humans, whether you agree with their policies or not. It's important.
Right. I've been telling people, I go through life and I find wonderful people wherever I go. I find I have dear friends who don't agree with me politically. I don't agree with them. It doesn't divide us. While if you watch the news, it's filled with people hating each other, and it's not my world. I don't see that, and I often wonder if it's my rose-colored glasses. But did you meet many fine people who didn't agree with you at all?
I met many people that did agree with me and many people that didn't. But I have to say, all of them were sincere in what they believed, and that they truly believed that their position was the correct one. And I think that you can't fault people for that.
Right.
They believe what they're going to believe, and we're free in America to do so. So I did meet people from all walks of life, and I really enjoyed meeting the people that I met from both sides, truthfully. I got interesting conversation from the left side, and I got a lot of support from the right. And I will say that it was a true honor to talk about the issues with these people. I met so many veterans, and we talked about issues, and I have to say they are truly the best that America has to offer, and I appreciate their service so much. So
you didn't run in, like, as I said, the media portrays this whole country is divided. You didn't run into too much. It doesn't sound like you ran into too much hate that they love to.
There were a few, but there were not. That was not the norm.
Right.
And so I think that that's important for people to realize that that is not the norm, that hateful rhetoric is not necessarily what we do.
Right. I think the hate and intolerance is something of the extreme left and the extreme right. I don't believe that most people, that huge swath in the middle, I don't believe. I think
that most people that I met were very tolerant.
Yeah.
On both sides. I had Democrats that would come up to me and explain that they were so happy that I was running and that they supported me even. And I think that the polarization that the media portrays is not necessarily the fact for everyday people. People have multiple party affiliations in their own families.
Oh, sure.
So you couldn't be that extremely polarized. And I think that there was I took a lot of flack, for lack of a better term, for being a supporter of Donald Trump.
Right.
And for supporting the president's policies towards trade and so forth.
Right.
I took a lot of heat for that. And I had a lot of people question why I could support that. But all in all, I think that people understood that that's my right.
Right. And I'm going to tell you, the vast majority of even mighty fine people running for office would not be able to handle telling the hard truth like that. They would dance around it a little bit, or they might maybe not lie, but maybe not tell the whole truth. But I've watched some mighty fine dancing going on, and you know what? In the early days of my career, I probably tap danced some too, because it is uncomfortable to believe something that the person asking you totally disagrees with you on.
No, absolutely. In most of my interviews and conversations, I could tell which person was believing
Right.
against what I was saying and so forth. And I made up my mind at the beginning of the campaign that I was going to state my position clearly and that I was not going to be somebody who wavered on the issues. And I feel that I was true to that. I never said anything that I didn't believe.
Right. But did your opinion sometimes not change, but maybe evolve because you had to do a lot of learning on your feet. I would imagine some of them evolved a little bit.
I would say that my opinions didn't change, but perhaps got added to. Like there was not necessarily an evolving of where I stood, because where I stood really didn't change, if I'm honest. Right. But I would add additional thoughts to it, and that would be the best way I could describe it. Perhaps, you're looking at an issue and you're like, this is the solution, and then you hadn't thought about this side piece that then ties in, and you see how it fits in with what you... So I would say that you could definitely add to your knowledge and of these things, but if I'm honest, my opinions didn't change from day one.
Okay, we only have about 5 minutes left. What more would you like to tell the listeners?
What I would like the most to tell listeners is that the Republican Party made a great deal of ground in the state of Vermont. We did lose seats. We are definitely the minority in the state and have been for a long time. But we did gain ground because we went out and we had a slate of excellent candidates. And they talked to the people. They connected with people, and they got inside knowledge of what the state is concerned about. And I did this, and Lawrence Zupan did this, and the many local candidates did this. And though we did not win, we connected with people. And I would encourage them to not give up. Don Turner, all of these people that worked so hard, I would encourage them to not give up, that we can do better and we can do more. And this was the first strong showing that the Republican Party had in the state of Vermont in many, many years. And if we don't waver on that, and if we stay united in the message that we put forth and in what we want to accomplish for the state, because I know in my heart that these people had the best interest of the state in their intention for running. I know many of them personally now, and I can tell you that they truly meant for the good of the state. They can keep working on that, and they can keep talking about the issues, and they can keep connected with the community. And it's not hopeless. It's not hopeless for them. It's not hopeless for the state of Vermont. We can turn these things around, and we can bring common sense leadership, as I like to talk about it. It is my sincere hope that the two senators and Congressman Welsh are able to represent the state of Vermont better. And I hope that our campaigns made them aware of the issues that people are concerned about, and perhaps will bring them to a point where they're going to focus more on the things that concerned our supporters.
Right. You know, you mentioned Don Turner. I served with Don, and I served with
wonderful man.
And I served with Lieutenant Governor Zuckerman, both fine men in their own way. But I'm going to tell you, Don Turner is one of the finest human beings. He's a businessman. He's a father,
firefighter,
outstanding legislator. There was no finer man running for that seat. And as I said, not to dish David Zuckerman, I get along with him well, but I do believe that Don Turner is, I won't say one in a lifetime opportunity to have somebody like him, but that guy, I believe if he was in another state, he'd be governor.
I do think that Don Turner had enormous possibility to be, and I would encourage him to run again. I know that at this point he's probably recouping, but I would think that that would be important. And I want to thank every single one of my supporters who came out. They stood in the rain holding signs. They were cold. They worked hard. They did everything they could to help me, and I want them to know that I did everything that I could. And I have no regrets about how I ran my campaign, and I truly hope they have no regrets about supporting me.
One last question: What now? Are you gonna look at maybe a local race and then springboard off to a national, or are you?
I hate to give away secrets, Scott, but right now I'm focused on my family, getting through the holidays, all of those things. But I will remain in politics.
Right.
So.
And I'm sure you've got some great connections in all realms of politics. And you know what is some of your adversaries, they're actually very good people. Now the race is done. I'm sure, I'm sure you can even. If you need anything, as in like understanding something, I'm sure they'll, even people that you went against or people on the other side, they will help you.
I will say that the people that I've met in this campaign are invaluable. Right. I truly am appreciative to call many of them personal friends now that the campaign is over. We got to know each other very well, and I'm pleased to say that I have many friends from it.
Right. And I'm actually proud to say in Vermont, there is still a bit of, I still have a bit of faith in the political process. I might not agree with how things are going now, but I do believe that our state still has people serving it. While I don't agree with them, for the most part, I think they're decent people who I just happen to disagree with.
I truly hope so. I truly hope that with the majority that the other party has, with the Democratic Party has a very strong majority, I hope that they do not descend into pettiness.
Oh, I know.
And I hope that they will continue to focus on what the people need and not an agenda that they believe in. I think that it's very important for everyone involved in politics to focus on their constituents and less on the agenda.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you for coming on,
Thank
and
you,
I want to congratulate you on your run.
Thank
No,
you.
you didn't win, but I know you won in so many other ways, and I think it'll be a springboard.
I do too. I believe
that.
that. I believe that it was one of the best things that I've done in my life thus far.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to the viewers for tuning in to another segment of the Northeast Kingdom Voice.